Imagine 18th century Vienna, the cradle of European classical music. This is the city where Haydn and Mozart rose to fame, and Beethoven too spent a significant amount of time there. This is what we know today, but have you ever asked yourself what the day-to-day of musical life actually looked like? Who did people back then celebrate for their contributions to music? Today, we delve into one of those who was celebrated as a musical genius, quite literally, but then almost completely forgotten. I'm talking of Marianna Martines.
Hi, Judith from the future here. So I had already completely finished editing this video and then my hard drive malfunctioned and I cannot access any of my files. I'm pretty devastated. If you know how to fix hard drives that won't mount even though they show up on the utility disk, do let me know in the comments. I would appreciate any help. But anyway, so the fact that I can't access all my files means that I have to re-edit this video now, and unfortunately it also means that all the cute little cartoons of Martinez in 18th century Vienna that I had prepared and edited into the video are now gone. The only one I have left is this one that's also in the thumbnail of the video and a couple of others. So here's the re-edited video. I hope you enjoy it anyway.
Today, I will tell you about the life of this composer, performer, salonnière in Vienna, about her childhood, growing up in the vicinity of the Habsburg court, having some of Europe's most famous artists as teachers, and then growing up pursuing musical accolades while navigating constraints put on her through her class and gender. Marianna Martines was born on the 4th of May in 1744 in Vienna, a city bursting with music, ambition, and imperial spectacle. Her father, Niccolo Martinez, had come from Naples to work for the Papal Nuncio following a stint in the military. Her mother, Maria Theresia, was Austrian, though unfortunately much about her background remains unknown. But here's the turning point. The Martinez family didn't just live anywhere. They lived in the Michaela house. In this house, they shared an apartment with Pietro Metastasio, who was one of the most famous librettists in Europe and arguably the single most influential person for 18th century opera. He himself was also Italian, like Martinez's father Niccolo, but had come to Vienna to serve as the imperial court poet for the Habsburg emperors. The fact that the Martinez family lived in the same apartment with Metastasio wasn't just a lucky break. This was like growing up inside the beating heart of European musical culture. The exact reason why and how the Martinez and Metastasio households were merged is not entirely clear, but Niccolo and Metastasio had known each other prior. It was through Metastasio that young Marianna was immersed in poetry, science, literature, languages, and music at the highest level. He recognized her talent early on and oversaw her education. And because he had a great many connections throughout Europe, he was able to organize the best teachers for Marianna. But it wasn't just connections. Serendipity also seemed to play into it. Around 1750, a teenage musician recently dismissed from the choir of St. Stephen's Cathedral moved into the same building, the Michaela house. And this young musician moved into the cheap attic room because that's the only thing they could afford. And what was the name of this young musician? Joseph Haydn. Haydn became Marianna's keyboard teacher and accompanied her singing lessons with the legendary opera composer Nicola Porpora. Already in her teens, Martinez was busy composing. She wrote a lot of sacred music and even had one of her masses performed in St. Michael's Church, which is located just next to Michaela House. By the early 1760s, Martinez's career was fully underway, though I should say that she would probably not have called it a career. Judging by everything we know about Martinez, she was adamant that she was a dilettante. Now, dilettante didn't have the same pejorative undertone it does today. Calling herself a dilettante meant simply that she did not pursue music as a professional, that is, for profit. Her family belonged to the upper middle class and eventually joined lower aristocracy when Marianna's brothers were ennobled. That, combined with the fact that Marianna remained unmarried, meant that she had to adhere very strictly to the written and unwritten rules of 18th century polite society. These rules very much included not working for money and calling herself a professional of anything. However, being a dilettante did not mean that the quality of her music was in any way lacking. For instance, the only two published pieces by Martines are two of her keyboard sonatas. They are in a multi-volume collection of keyboard pieces that were published by Ulrich Haffner. In this collection, Martines is not only the only woman, but also the only dilettante. All the other men in the collection were professional musicians with official employment. It is safe to assume then that Martines would not have been included had her music been in any way lacking quality. The 1760s were also marked by personal loss for her. In 1764, Martines' father died. After that, Metastasio stepped up to act even more so than before as a paternal mentor figure. Metastasio had already written his will, which made the Martines children his heirs, but now, a year after Niccolo Martines passed away, he rewrote it and specified more things that he left to them. Marianna received a not insignificant sum of money, as well as his musical instruments and other things. This inheritance was really important for Marianna and also her sister Antonia, who received the same stipend, because they did not have much else in terms of financial support. Not being married, Marianna could not count on being provided for by a husband. Her living arrangement was that she and Antonia lived with their eldest brother Joseph, and Metastasio urged them in his will to continue living together. Since all three siblings were unmarried, Metastasio emphasized how he believed their personal happiness was contingent on staying together. We don't actually know if Marianna ever contemplated venturing out on her own, but the three siblings did indeed continue to share a household. Joseph was the first to die, and then in 1812, Antonia and Marianna died within a day from each other. Another extraordinary accomplishment of Martines happened in 1773. Through Metastasio's international connections, Padre Martini had gotten wind of Martines' compositional prowess and had been in touch with her. Padre Martini was, at the time, the most influential member of the Accademia Filarmonica di Bologna, an organization for, until then, only men composers. It was one of the most prestigious musical institutions in Europe. Becoming a member was like getting the ultimate stamp of approval as a composer. So after showing Padre Martini some of her compositions, Martines' membership was put up for vote by the Accademia Filarmonica di Bologna, and she was unanimously elected as the first ever woman to become a member. Martines also had several other international connections that put her on the map for anyone seriously engaged with music in the 18th century. These connections included Saverio Mattei, who commissioned her to set some of his texts to music, and also Charles Burney, who visited Vienna from the UK and remembered hearing Martines play and sing her own compositions for him with greatest fondness in his journals. Another important milestone that I already mentioned was the ennobling of the Martines family. Until then, the Martines siblings had all been very ambitious in pursuing careers, or non-careers in the case of Martines. Joseph, the eldest brother in particular, had increasingly worked on establishing himself within the vicinity of the Habsburg court. He was working at the Imperial Library, and he was tutoring several of the Habsburg children, including the future Emperor Joseph II. In 1774, he and his siblings were acknowledged for their efforts by being elevated into the Ritterstand, that is, they were made knights, by Empress Maria Theresia. By the 1780s, Martines was firmly established in the Viennese music scene. Her weekly Saturday evening salons were legendary. They were visited by intellectuals, visitors to the cities, and other artists, including Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. In fact, we know that Mozart and Martines played together on some of these occasions. They would play four-hand compositions for keyboard. During the 1780s, while being busy as a salonnière, Martines also wrote some of her large-scale works, including one of her two oratorios, Isacco, Figura del Redentore. This was performed by the Tonkünstlersozietät in 1782. What is fascinating about Martines' oratorio is that many of the vocal soloists of her oratorio were the same that also sang the premiere of Mozart's Singspiel, his German opera, Die Entführung aus dem Serail, which was premiered later that same year. Looking at the actual music, there are also several more parallels between the works that suggest Mozart may have done more than just get inspiration from Martines as a composer. In early December 1812, tragedy struck twice. Within 2 days, both Antonia and Marianna Martines died, likely from tuberculosis. Marianna was at that point 68 years old. After her death, she remained in the musical memory of specialist circles well into the 19th century. But as the project of canon formation in the 1800s progressed and people increasingly questioned the fundamental ability of women to do creative work, such as writing music, Martines faded from history. But thanks to scholarship like that of Irving Gott and ongoing research, including my Oxford PhD thesis on Martines, her music is being heard and studied again. Martines' music is being heard, not as a footnote, not as an exception, but as what it truly is, the voice of a composer who belonged at the very center of 18th century musical life. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Marianna Martines, like, subscribe, and share this video, because rediscovering voices like hers changes how we understand music history itself.